Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. So this is the first time we've ever set it up this way, and I think we're going to keep it for the future, where we actually have the companies present. They're the interesting part of Harris & Harris Group, and then we turn to the shareholder meeting. But I'll apologize ahead of time. The beginning of the shareholder meeting is often anticlimactic in that I think many of you have heard the script for these things many times before. So we will get started now, and I'll begin it. So first of all, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Doug Jamison. As you know, I'm the chairman and CEO of Harris & Harris Group. I'll be chairing the meeting this afternoon. I now call this meeting to order. I welcome our shareholders and guests to the Harris & Harris Group 2016 Annual Meeting of Shareholders. Before making introductions, I'd like to review the program for the meeting. We'll begin by covering the business of the meeting as outlined in the proxy. There's no informal session meeting at this year because we did that, of course, at the first half today. We'd also like to ask that you hold all questions and comments to the designated question and comment periods, of which there will be two. One will take place during the formal part of the meeting prior to voting on the three proposals on the agenda. Please restrict your questions and comments at that time to those three proposals. A second question and comment period will follow the voting, and it's the appropriate time to ask questions not related to the agenda items. We ask that all questions and comments be directed to me for response or referral to the appropriate officer of director of Harris & Harris Group, and that you be as brief as possible to allow everyone who wishes an opportunity to participate. Also, please identify yourself before you speak and tell us if you are a shareholder or a proxy for a shareholder. And if you're a proxy for a shareholder, please identify the shareholder. I'd like to introduce our directors and nominee for director and officers who are present today. Please stand when I call your name. Rich Shanley, Dill Ayers, Philip Bauman, Stacy Brandom, Chuck Ramsey, Kevin Rendino, and officers Daniel Wolf, Mary Brady, Blake Stevens, Reuben Hurst, which is sitting right here, has been designated the Inspector of Elections. He's present today. The inspector has signed his oath, and the secretary has been instructed to file the oath with the records of this meeting. Now I would like to introduce Rich Shanley, who's our lead independent director, who'll speak on behalf of the board. When he finishes, he will introduce our newest board member, Kevin Rendino.
Thanks, Doug, and good afternoon, everybody. Many of you know me. I'm Rich Shanley. I am the lead independent director of Harris & Harris Group. And as I did last year and the last couple of years, I'm going to make a few opening remarks. Initially, I want to again provide a little bit of perspective about the governance structure of your board. As lead independent director, I head up the Independent Directors Committee. We meet in face-to-face sessions. We meet as a group with management. We also meet in an executive session without management present. And we do that several times during the year. And we might have situations where something comes up and we'll convene a phone call on an impromptu or ad hoc basis. We discuss on that committee long-term strategy, and we discuss management's approach to overall long-range planning. Our meetings are frank, I think my fellow members would agree, and generate in-depth discussions and analysis of management's plans and approaches, which we feed back our output to management. As lead independent director, CEO Doug Jamison and I are in regular touch through a planned series of phone calls and meetings, as well as ad hoc contacts as issues which need immediate attention might arise. I'd also like to comment on the portfolio. I mean, I think that anyone who was here for the portfolio presentations appreciates the amazing depth and breadth of the companies that presented. I've heard some of them before. I thought they were tremendous. And really, we've completed, and I say completed, but we are continually working on completing and a transformation of the portfolio, and that's resulted in fewer companies but greater ownership per investee. That's part of our strategy. We've also focused, obviously, as you heard this morning in Doug's presentation, on companies in the precision health and medicine field. And we believe that there are several investments in our current portfolio that are maturing with the potential for exciting returns. And you heard from at least two of them this morning, D-Wave and HCO. We've also embarked on several other initiatives which we believe should result in enhanced shareholder value. First, we've reduced our expenses significantly and focused our investment efforts, as you've heard. We've formed the Harris & Harris Group Co-Investment Fund, which Daniel spoke about earlier today, which will allow investors to directly participate in investing in certain portfolio companies through access to our preemptive rights. And of course, this morning we announced the second of those. D-Wave was the first and HCO was the second. Thirdly, you heard management speak this morning about its plans in precision health and medicine and how the companies we've been investing in are not only synergistic with each other, but also part of a larger plan in the changing healthcare market. If you think back to that railroad analogy that Doug used, that's what that's all about. My final point relates to the value of Tiny's stock. All the independent directors on the board are substantial investors in Harris & Harris stock. I also want to note that the management team have most of their net worth tied up in Harris & Harris stock, so we're committed to the company. Because of the nature of Harris & Harris investments in early stage companies that very often involve additional rounds of financing, buyouts, mergers, and sometimes IPOs, directors are at many times, I would say most times, privy to non-public information and hence very often not free to make open market purchases of Harris & Harris stock at points in time when we might otherwise desire to do so. Personally, based on what I've learned about Harris & Harris portfolio through my work on the board, I continue to be excited by the prospects of your company's portfolio and the cutting-edge technologies it encompasses. Thank you. I'd now like to introduce our newest board member, Kevin Rendino. Kevin was suggested to us by one of our institutional investors and over the past few months has spent time with management, myself and other board members, so he's going to hit the ground running. He'll discuss his background and the reasons he's agreed to serve on the board, and we're glad to welcome him to Harris & Harris. Kevin.
Thank you very much, Rich, and thanks, Doug and Daniel and team, for what was a very wonderful session this morning. I certainly learned a lot. My name is Kevin Rendino, and for 24 years, I've managed equity mutual funds for Merrill Lynch and BlackRock. I currently do the same for the firm that I run now, RGJ Capital. To say I'm excited to become a director at Harris & Harris is an understatement, although I didn't realize I was supposed to give blood before I joined the board. By the way, I don't like the San Francisco 49ers. They told me my blood was blue because I'm a giant season ticket holder. So, in my career, I've bought companies that at times when the businesses were either out of favor or trading at depressed valuations. We've bought companies that traded at 2/3 the market multiple on either price to earnings or price to cash flow, half the market on price to book value, or companies that had an above average dividend yield. It's a Graham and Dodd, Warren Buffett approach to investing. The key to long-term investment success, however, is not only derived from the price that you pay for the business that you buy, but a business run by smart, capable, thoughtful executive teams who make business decisions with shareholders as their top priority. Fortunately for me, Harris & Harris has both. Number one, an inexpensive stock relative to its net asset value, and two, a management team who understands the complexities of its current structure as a BDC, and one who is thinking outside the box for ways to create value for you by looking at different structures. This management team and the board know that the status quo is challenged, and they are not sitting still, which is why I'm excited to join this board. It is my view that Harris & Harris has the right assets for success. Number one, the assets of the portfolio companies, and two, the assets in the executive suite and on the board. I firmly believe if we make the right decisions, we will alter the path and lead Harris & Harris to a very successful future, one that rewards its shareholders. In my mind, if we make the right decisions, we will control our destiny, and that's why I joined. Certainly, if I didn't feel that way, I never would have joined. To our shareholders, thank you very much for voting me to the board. I look forward to serving you and working hard on your behalf. To my fellow board members and management team, I look forward to working with you. As I recently told a friend of mine, the symbol for Harris & Harris stock, as all of you know, is TINY, T-I-N-Y. I think if we make the right decisions, I hope that one day we can change that to H-U-G-E. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Rich. Thank you, Kevin. So I am informed that a quorum is present for the transactions of business today. Proper notice of the meeting was duly mailed on about April 29th, 2016, to all holders of record on April 11th, 2016. And the affidavit of the transfer agent confirms such mailing. The secretary will please file the affidavit with the records of the company and a copy of the minutes of this meeting. April 11th, 2016 is the record date for voting of shares at the meeting. As of the record date, the company had 30,845,754 shares of common stock outstanding, and that's 31,908,083 shares, including the restricted stock with voting rights. We'll now proceed to the formal business of the meeting. At this meeting, shareholders are voting to elect 7 directors to the board of directors to serve until the next annual meeting or until their respective successors are elected. The 7 persons nominated by the board are W. Dillaway Ayers, Jr., Dr. Philip A. Bauman, Stacy R. Brandom, Douglas W. Jamison, Charles E. Ramsey, Kevin M. Rendino, and Richard P. Shanley. The board of directors recommends that the shareholders vote for the election of the board's 7 nominees, the company. The second item of business is the approval of the audit committee's selection of PricewaterhouseCoopers as the independent registered public accountant for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2016. The board of directors recommends that the shareholders vote for this proposal. The third item of business is the approval on an advisory basis of the executive compensation as described in the Compensation Discussion Analysis, or CDNA, and the accompanying tabular narrative disclosure set forth in the proxy statement for the annual meeting. The board of directors recommends that shareholders vote for this proposal. This is the part where we will now take questions or comments relating to the specific agenda items. So that's for Proposal 1, the election of directors. For Proposal 2, the authorization for the Audit Committee's selection of PwC as the independent registered accountant. And Proposal 3, the advisory vote on executive compensation. I ask that you please hold any general questions or comments until the designated question and comment period later in the proceedings. And again, when you are recognized, please address your questions or comments to me. Neither I or another officer of the company will respond. Also, when you are recognized, please state your name and whether you are a Harris & Harris Group shareholder or a proxy first shareholder. And if you're a proxy first shareholder, please name that shareholder. The floor is now open to questions on Proposal 1, Proposal 2, and Proposal 3, if we have any. Do we have any questions on those 3 proposals?